The metal gates of the maximum security prison groaned in defiance as they were wrenched open, the lock shattered by the force of the creature's impact. Twisted, mutated fingers clawed at the steel as glowing red eyes peered through the gaping hole, scanning the courtyard for any signs of life. A lone guard, his face a mask of pure terror, stumbled backwards, fumbling for his weapon. But before he could raise his gun, a bone-chilling roar shattered the eerie silence. From the darkness, a hulking figure emerged, a grotesque, humanoid abomination, its skin a sickly, pulsating gray. Rows of razor-sharp teeth gleamed in the faint light as it charged forward, closing the distance in a heartbeat. The guard's scream was cut short as the creature's massive jaws clamped down, crushing his skull with sickening ease. Blood and gore spattered across the courtyard as the beast tossed the lifeless body aside, its hunger unabated. More figures emerged from the shadows, their movements jerky and unnatural. Hundreds of the undead crawled through the shattered gates, their glazed eyes fixed on a singular purpose: to feed. From the central tower, a lone survivor watched in horror as the nightmare unfolded. Jamie, a young woman with a steely determination etched on her face, gripped the rifle in her hands, her knuckles turning white. She had seen the reports, the videos of the chaos that had gripped the city, but nothing could have prepared her for the sheer scale of the onslaught. As the horde flooded the courtyard, Jamie knew she had to act. Swallowing her fear, she braced the rifle against the window and took aim, squeezing the trigger in rapid succession. Zombies dropped one by one, their bodies collapsing in grotesque heaps, but the relentless tide showed no signs of slowing. Suddenly, a deafening roar shook the air, and Jamie's blood ran cold. The hulking creature that had led the charge now turned its attention towards the tower, its glowing eyes fixed on her position. With a surge of adrenaline, Jamie realized the true horror of the situation. This wasn't just a mindless horde, but a coordinated assault led by a creature that seemed to possess a twisted intelligence. As the beast charged towards the tower, Jamie knew she had to move. Tearing her gaze away from the advancing horror, she scrambled down the stairs, her heart pounding in her ears. She had to find a way out, to warn the others, if there were any left. Bursting through the door, Jamie was met with a scene of utter chaos. Prisoners and guards alike were engaged in a desperate struggle for survival, their cries of terror echoing through the halls. Zombies swarmed the compound, their animalistic grunts and the sickening sounds of tearing flesh creating a discordant symphony of pure horror. Weaving her way through the carnage, Jamie searched frantically for a safe exit, but the once familiar corridors had become a labyrinth of death. Just as she rounded a corner, a hand clamped down on her shoulder, and she whirled around, rifle raised and ready to fire. But the face that greeted her was not that of a zombie, but a fellow survivor, a young man, his eyes wide with panic. "You have to help us," he cried, his voice trembling. They're not just mindless creatures anymore. There's something leading them, something _intelligent _. Jamie's heart sank as she realized the full extent of the nightmare that had descended upon the prison. With the hulking creature in pursuit and a horde of the undead closing in, the odds of survival seemed impossibly slim. But she knew she had to try, for the sake of those trapped within the walls, and for the rest of the world beyond. Gripping the young man's arm, Jamie pulled him along as she darted down the corridor, her boots pounding against the concrete floor. The sound of the zombie's guttural moans and the thunderous roar of the hulking creature reverberated through the halls, a symphony of pure terror. "We have to find the others," Jamie yelled over the din, her eyes darting side to side as she searched for any sign of a safe haven. "There has to be a way out of this hell." The young man, his face etched with desperation, nodded mutely, struggling to keep pace with Jamie's urgency. As they rounded a corner, the sound of gunfire echoed in the distance, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Pushing through a group of shambling undead, Jamie and her companion emerged into a makeshift command center, where a small group of guards and inmates huddled behind hastily erected barricades. Bullets whizzed through the air, felling the zombies that clawed at the makeshift defenses. "Over here." A gruff voice called out, and Jamie spotted a rugged-looking man motioning them forward. "Hurry, before they break through." Without hesitation, Jamie and the young man darted across the open space, dodging the grasping hands of the undead. As they reached the relative safety of the barricade, the man grabbed Jamie's shoulder, his eyes burning with a fierce determination. "You're the one they're after," he said, his voice low and urgent. "That _thing leading the horde, it's focused on you." Jamie's blood ran cold at the realization. Somehow, the hulking creature had singled her out, and that could only mean one thing. It was more than just a mindless beast, but a twisted, intelligent entity with a purpose. Before she could respond, a deafening crash reverberated through the compound, and the barricade shuddered under the onslaught of the horde. The guards redoubled their efforts, their guns roaring as they tried to stem the tide of the undead. Clutching her rifle, Jamie scanned the chaos, her mind racing. If the creature was after her, then she couldn't remain here and endanger the others. Turning to the rugged man, she shouted, "I need to draw it away from here. You have to get these people to safety." The man's eyes widened, but before he could protest, Jamie was already vaulting over the barricade, her heart pounding in her ears. Dodging the grasping hands of the zombies, she sprinted down the corridor, her boots echoing against the walls. As she ran, she could hear the thunderous footsteps of the hulking creature behind her, its growls growing louder with each passing moment. Adrenaline surging through her veins, Jamie pushed herself to the limit, her lungs burning as she desperately searched for a way to lose the beast. Rounding a corner, she found herself in the prison's central courtyard, the shattered gates a gaping wound in the once secure compound. Without hesitation, she ran for the opening, her only thought to lead the creature away from the others and buy them time to escape. As she burst into the open, the scorching sun blinding her for a moment, the hulking figure emerged from the darkness, its glowing eyes fixed on her. With a bone-chilling roar, it charged forward, its massive jaws gaping wide. Raising her rifle, Jamie braced herself for the inevitable onslaught, her finger tightening on the trigger. This was it, the moment of truth. If she failed, the nightmare would consume them all. The crack of the rifle echoed through the courtyard as Jamie opened fire, her shots ripping into the hulking creature's flesh. But the beast seemed unfazed, its eyes burning with a twisted intelligence as it closed the distance, its massive jaws snapping at the air. Cursing under her breath, Jamie backpedaled, her finger refusing to leave the trigger. Bullet after bullet found their mark, yet the creature continued its relentless advance, its sheer size and strength overwhelming her defenses. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught the corner of her eye, and Jamie's heart sank as she spotted the horde of zombies pouring through the shattered gates, their soulless eyes fixed on her. Trapped between the towering abomination and the ravenous undead, Jamie's options were rapidly dwindling. With a desperate surge of adrenaline, she ducked under the creature's lunge, its claws grazing her arm as she rolled to the side. Scrambling to her feet, she sprinted towards the outer perimeter of the courtyard, her mind racing to formulate a plan. As she ran, the creature's thunderous roar echoed behind her, its pursuit unrelenting. The zombies, drawn by the commotion, swarmed in her direction, their shambling forms a wave of death closing in from all sides. Spotting a crumbling stairwell leading to the prison's outer wall, Jamie made a split-second decision. Gripping the rifle tightly, she charged up the stairs, her boots pounding against the concrete. Reaching the top, she risked a glance behind her, her eyes widening at the sight of the hulking creature effortlessly climbing the stairs, its massive form cutting off any chance of escape. With no other choice, Jamie turned and braced the rifle against the crumbling ledge, her finger tightening on the trigger. As the creature closed in, she unleashed a barrage of fire, the bullets tearing through its flesh with sickening impact. But the beast refused to falter, its glowing eyes fixed on her with a predatory intensity. Suddenly, a deafening explosion rocked the courtyard, the shockwave nearly knocking Jamie off her feet. Whirling around, she watched in stunned disbelief as a section of the outer wall crumbled, opening a gap in the defenses. Through the dust and debris, a familiar figure emerged, the rugged man from the command center, clutching a rocket launcher with a grim determination. Without a moment's hesitation, he fired again, the projectile streaking towards the hulking creature and engulfing it in a blaze of fire and shrapnel. The beast roared in agony, its massive form staggering backwards as the flames licked at its flesh. Seizing the opportunity, Jamie turned and sprinted down the stairs, her boots barely touching the concrete as she raced towards the breach in the wall. Behind her, the horde of zombies surged forward, their ranks thinned but still relentless in their pursuit. Adrenaline surging through her veins, Jamie pushed herself to the limit, her lungs burning as she fought for her life. As she reached the opening in the wall, a familiar face greeted her. The young man from earlier, his eyes wide with relief. Without a word, he grabbed her hand and pulled her through the breach, the two of them emerging into the chaos of the outside world. But the nightmare was far from over, for the hulking creature still lurked within the prison walls, its determination to claim its prize unbroken. And Jamie knew that their only hope for survival lay in finding a way to stop the beast and uncover the twisted intelligence that guided it. Stumbling through the shattered remains of the prison wall, Jamie and the young man found themselves confronted with a world in the throes of unimaginable horror. The once bustling streets were now a nightmare landscape, littered with the bodies of the dead and the shambling forms of the undead. Jamie's eyes darted around, taking in the devastation, her mind reeling with the realization that this was no longer just a localized crisis, but a full-scale apocalypse. The roar of the hulking creature echoed behind them, a constant reminder of the relentless pursuit. "We need to find somewhere safe," the young man said, his voice shaking with barely contained panic. "We can't stay out in the open like this." Nodding, Jamie scanned their surroundings, her gaze settling on a partially collapsed storefront a few blocks away. Gripping the young man's arm, she gestured towards the makeshift shelter, her expression grim. "That's our best chance," she said, her voice low and urgent. "We have to move now." The two survivors sprinted through the deserted streets, their boots pounding against the cracked pavement as they weaved around the shambling forms of the undead. Jamie's heart pounded in her ears, her grip on the rifle tightening with each step. Reaching the storefront, they ducked inside, the musty air stinging their lungs. Barricading the entrance as best they could, Jamie and the young man took a moment to catch their breath, their eyes scanning the dimly lit interior for any signs of danger. Who are you?" the young man finally asked, his gaze fixed on Jamie. "Jamie," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "And you?" "Alex," he said, his expression a mixture of relief and trepidation. "What the hell is happening out there?" Jamie's eyes narrowed as she considered the question, the weight of the situation pressing down on her. "I think we're facing something far worse than just a zombie outbreak," she said slowly. "That creature, it's not like the others. It's leading them with a purpose." Alex's face paled, the implications of her words sinking in. "You mean it's _intelligent_?" Nodding grimly, Jamie continued, "And it's after _me_. I don't know why, but that thing is focused on me like I'm its target." The young man's eyes widened in horror, the realization dawning on him. "Then we have to get as far away from here as possible," he said, his voice trembling. "If it's after you, then we're both sitting ducks." Before Jamie could respond, a deafening roar shook the air, the sound of crumbling concrete sending a chill down their spines. Peering out through a crack in the barricade, they watched in stunned silence as the hulking creature emerged from the ruins of the prison, its glowing eyes scanning the surrounding area. It's looking for us," Alex whispered, his face ashen. Jamie's grip on the rifle tightened, her knuckles turning white. Then we have to move. Underscore now underscore, she said, her voice laced with determination. We can't stay here and wait for it to find us. Grabbing Alex's arm, she led him deeper into the store, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As they navigated the debris-strewn aisles, Jamie's mind raced, her thoughts consumed by the terrifying implications of the creature's intelligence and singular focus. If they couldn't escape its pursuit, then their only hope was to find a way to stop the beast, permanently. But the odds seemed impossibly stacked against them, with the undead horde and the towering abomination standing in their way. As they emerged into a back room, Jamie paused, her eyes scanning the area for a potential exit. She knew that their survival depended on their ability to stay one step ahead of the creature, to anticipate its movements and stay out of its reach. But with the world crumbling around them, and the very fabric of reality seemingly unraveling, Jamie couldn't help but wonder if they had any chance at all. The air in the cramped back room was thick with the scent of dust and decay, the shadows casting an eerie pall over the cluttered space. Jamie and Alex crouched behind an overturned shelving unit, their breathing ragged as they strained to catch any sign of the hulking creature's approach. The muffled roars and the distant screams that drifted in from the streets beyond only served to heighten the sense of dread that had settled over them. Jamie gripped the rifle tightly, her knuckles whitening with the intensity of her grip. She knew that their only hope of survival lay in staying one step ahead of the beast, but the odds seemed to be stacking against them with each passing moment. "We can't stay here," Alex whispered, his voice trembling. "That _thing_ is still out there, and it's not going to stop until it finds us." Jamie nodded, her mind racing as she tried to formulate a plan. "We need to find a way out of the city," she said, her gaze fixed on the partially boarded-up window. "If we can get to higher ground, maybe we can find some kind of safe haven." Alex's eyes widened, a glimmer of hope flickering in their depths. "The hospital," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's one of the tallest buildings in the city, and it's heavily fortified. If anyone's managed to hold out, it would be there." Jamie considered the idea, weighing the risks and the potential rewards. The hospital was certainly a tempting prospect, but the journey there would be fraught with danger. Still, with the creature relentlessly pursuing them, they had little choice but to try. "All right," she said, her voice low and resolute. "We'll head for the hospital, but we need to move quickly and quietly. That _thing_ is still out there, and I don't want to give it a chance to catch up to us." Alex nodded, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. Together, they rose from their hiding spot, their senses on high alert as they carefully made their way towards the back entrance of the store. The streets outside were a nightmare landscape, the once familiar cityscape now reduced to a war zone. The shambling forms of the undead dotted the cracked pavement, their glazed eyes fixed on any movement. Gripping the rifle tightly, Jamie led the way, her gaze darting from one end of the street to the other. The towering silhouette of the hospital loomed in the distance, a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. Suddenly, a deafening roar shattered the eerie silence, sending a chill down their spines. Jamie whirled around, her eyes widening as the hulking creature emerged from a side street, its glowing eyes fixed on them with a chilling intensity. "Run," she shouted, grabbing Alex's arm and pulling him forward. The young man needed no further encouragement, his legs pumping as they dashed through the streets, the pounding of their boots echoing through the eerie silence. Behind them, the creature's thunderous footsteps reverberated, its roars a constant reminder of the relentless pursuit. Jamie knew that they were running a race against time, their only hope of survival resting on their ability to reach the hospital before the beast caught up to them. As they rounded a corner, the towering structure of the hospital came into view, its walls a bastion of hope in the sea of chaos. But the creature was closing in, its massive form cutting off any chance of escape. Jamie knew that they had to make a stand, to find a way to stop the beast before it consumed them all. With a determined glint in her eye, she raised the rifle, her finger tightening on the trigger as she prepared to face the nightmare head-on. The crack of the rifle echoed through the deserted streets as Jamie opened fire, her shots ripping into the hulking creature's flesh. The beast roared in pain, its massive form staggering backwards, but it refused to relent. Beside her, Alex stood with his back pressed against the hospital wall, his eyes wide with terror. "We have to get inside," he cried, his voice cracking with desperation. Jamie knew he was right. They couldn't hold out against the creature forever. Not with the horde of undead closing in from all sides. Gritting her teeth, she continued to pour round after round into the beast, every bullet finding its mark but doing little to slow its relentless advance. As the creature drew closer, Jamie's mind raced, searching for a way to turn the tide. Suddenly, an idea took hold, and she whirled around, her gaze fixed on the hospital's entrance. "Alex, get the door open," she shouted, her voice laced with urgency. "I'll hold it off as long as I can." The young man hesitated for a moment, his eyes darting between Jamie and the towering abomination. But then he sprung into action, his fingers fumbling with the barricaded door. Jamie turned her attention back to the creature, her rifle blazing. She knew that her ammunition wouldn't last forever, but she was determined to buy Alex as much time as possible. The beast's roars of pain echoed through the air, but its pace never faltered, its glowing eyes fixed on her with a terrifying intensity. Just as Alex let out a triumphant cry, the door swinging open behind him, the creature surged forward, its massive jaws snapping dangerously close to Jamie's face. Instinctively, she ducked, the creature's claws grazing her shoulder as she stumbled backwards, her rifle slipping from her grasp. Cursing under her breath, Jamie scrambled towards the open door, her heart pounding in her ears. Alex reached out, his fingers closing around her sleeve, and he yanked her inside, the two of them tumbling through the entrance as the creature let out a bone-chilling roar. Slamming the door shut, they braced themselves against it, their chests heaving as they struggled to catch their breath. The sound of the creature's fists pounding against the metal reverberated through the corridors, a constant reminder of the danger that lurked just beyond their sanctuary. We made it," Alex gasped, his face a mask of disbelief. Jamie nodded, her gaze sweeping the dimly lit lobby. "For now," she said, her voice low and grim. "But that thing isn't going to give up so easily. We need to find a way to stop it, once and for all." As they pushed deeper into the hospital, the eerie silence was shattered by the sound of a distant scream, followed by the unmistakable groans of the undead. Jamie felt a chill run down her spine, the realization that they were not alone sinking in. "We're not the only ones here," she whispered, her grip tightening on the rifle she had retrieved from the floor. Alex's face paled, his eyes darting nervously from one end of the corridor to the other. Then we're not safe, are we?" Jamie's expression hardened, her resolve steeling. "No, we're not," she said, her voice edged with determination. "But we're going to have to find a way to survive, no matter what." With those words, she pressed onward, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls as she led the way towards an uncertain future, the sound of the creature's relentless pursuit a constant reminder of the nightmare that had descended upon them all. Jamie and Alex navigated the dimly lit hospital corridors, their footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. The distant sounds of the undead and the thunderous pounding of the creature's fists against the barricaded entrance only served to heighten the sense of dread that had settled over them. As they rounded a corner, the faint glow of emergency lighting cast an ominous shadow over the scene before them. Scattered bodies, both living and undead, littered the hallway, a testament to the horrors that had unfolded within these walls. Jamie's grip tightened on the rifle, her gaze scanning the area for any signs of movement. "Stay close to me," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. "We don't know what else might be lurking in the shadows." Alex nodded, his face a mask of terror as he followed closely behind her. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and the young man fought the urge to gag, his stomach churning with the horrors that surrounded them. As they made their way deeper into the hospital, Jamie's mind raced, her thoughts consumed by the towering abomination that had pursued them relentlessly. She knew that they had to find a way to stop the creature, to end its twisted reign of terror, but the odds seemed impossibly stacked against them. Suddenly, a faint noise caught her attention, and she held up a hand, signaling Alex to stop. Straining her ears, she listened intently, her eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. A muffled sob, barely audible, drifted through the corridor, and Jamie felt a surge of hope. "Hello," she called out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is someone there?" A moment of tense silence passed, and then a figure emerged from the shadows, their features obscured by the dim lighting. As they drew closer, Jamie felt her breath catch in her throat. It was a young woman, her eyes wide with terror and her clothes stained with blood. "Please," the woman whispered, her voice trembling. "You have to help me." Jamie didn't hesitate, quickly crossing the distance between them and placing a steadying hand on the woman's shoulder. "What happened?" she asked, her gaze sweeping the woman's form for any signs of injury. The woman's eyes darted frantically, her voice little more than a whimper. The underscore thing underscore," she stammered. It's not done with us. It's still out there, underscore hunting underscore." Jamie felt a chill run down her spine, the realization dawning on her. "The creature," she said, her voice low and grim. "It's after underscore all underscore of us, isn't it?" The woman nodded, her face a mask of pure terror. "We tried to hold it off, but it just underscore kept coming underscore. It's too strong, too underscore intelligent underscore. Nothing we do can stop it." Jamie's mind raced, her thoughts consumed by the implications of the woman's words. If the creature was truly leading the horde, and its focus was not just on her, but on all the survivors trapped within the hospital, then their situation was even more dire than she had imagined. Glancing over at Alex, she saw the same realization dawning on his face, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and resolve. "Then we have to find a way to stop it," Jamie said, her voice steady and determined. "We can't let it destroy everything. Not while there's still a chance to fight back." The woman's eyes widened, a glimmer of hope flickering in their depths. You really think you can do it?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jamie nodded, her expression grim. "We have to try," she said, her grip tightening on the rifle. "For all our sakes." With those words, she turned and continued down the corridor, Alex and the woman following closely behind. The path ahead was uncertain, the obstacles seemingly insurmountable, but Jamie knew that they had no choice but to confront the nightmare head-on. The fate of the entire world now rested on their shoulders, and she was determined to do whatever it took to survive and prevail. The trio moved cautiously through the dimly lit hospital corridors, their senses on high alert for any sign of the hulking creature or the undead horde. The distant roars and the muffled cries of terror only served to heighten the tension that had settled over them, the weight of their mission bearing down with every step. As they rounded a corner, Jamie's eyes widened at the sight of a massive, barricaded door at the end of the hall. "That must be the main entrance to the hospital's emergency operations center," she whispered, her gaze scanning the area for any signs of life. The woman beside her nodded, her face etched with a mixture of hope and trepidation. "If there are any survivors left, they'll be holed up in there," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jamie's grip tightened on the rifle, her mind racing with the implications. "Then that's where we need to go," she said, her voice resolute. "If we can reach the survivors, maybe we can find a way to stop that underscore thing underscore once and for all." Alex, his face a mask of determination, stepped forward, his eyes scanning the barricaded door. "But how do we get in?" he asked, his voice laced with urgency. "The place is practically sealed off." Jamie's gaze narrowed as she considered their options, the sounds of the creature's relentless pursuit echoing in the distance. "We'll have to risk it," she said, her voice low and grim. "It's our only chance." Without another word, she stepped forward, her boots thudding against the tiled floor as she approached the barricaded door. Raising her rifle, she took a deep breath and unleashed a barrage of fire, the bullets tearing through the makeshift defenses. The deafening roar of the creature shook the air, and Jamie knew that their time was running out. "Open the door," she shouted, her voice laced with desperation. Beside her, Alex and the woman scrambled to follow her instructions, their fingers fumbling with the locks and bolts that held the door in place. As the last barrier fell away, the massive door swung open, and they hurled themselves through the entrance, slamming it shut behind them. The sounds of the creature's pursuit grew closer, its thunderous footsteps shaking the very foundations of the hospital. Jamie and the others pressed their bodies against the door, their muscles straining as they fought to hold it closed. "We can't hold it off forever," Alex cried, his face a mask of pure terror. Jamie's gaze darted around the emergency operations center, her mind racing. Spotting a row of computer terminals, an idea took hold. "Over there," she shouted, gesturing to the equipment. "We might be able to find a way to stop that _thing_." Without hesitation, the trio rushed to the terminals, their fingers flying across the keyboards as they searched for any clues or instructions that could help them turn the tide. Suddenly, a series of flashing lights and warning messages appeared on the screens, and Jamie felt a glimmer of hope. It's a containment protocol," she breathed, her eyes widening. "We might be able to use this to trap the creature." The woman beside her nodded, her face etched with determination. "Then let's do it," she said, her voice steady and resolute. As the trio worked tirelessly to activate the protocol, the sounds of the creature's pursuit grew ever closer, the very air vibrating with the force of its approach. Jamie could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins, her heart pounding in her ears as she fought to stay focused. Finally, with a triumphant cry, the woman beside her stabbed a key, and the entire room erupted in a deafening cacophony of alarms and blaring sirens. Jamie braced herself as the creature's thunderous roar echoed through the halls, the very walls shaking with the force of its rage. But as the beast charged towards the emergency operations center, a series of heavy-duty doors slammed shut, sealing off the corridor and trapping the creature within. Its roars of fury reverberated through the chamber, but the containment protocol had done its job. The nightmare had been contained, at least for the moment. Jamie and the others stared at the screens in stunned silence, their bodies trembling with a mix of relief and disbelief. They had done it. They had found a way to stop the towering abomination, to turn the tide of the apocalypse. But as the adrenaline began to fade, Jamie knew that their work was far from over. The world beyond the hospital walls was still in the grip of a horrific nightmare, and there were countless others who needed their help. With a steely determination in her eyes, she turned to the others, her voice laced with resolve. "Let's get to work," she said, her gaze sweeping the room. "We've got a world to save. **********************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************